It's one of the most exciting times of the year. It is wrestling postseason for both the PIAA and for Penn State Wrestling as they enter the Big Ten tournament at the BJC this weekend. We're going to preview both of those here on The Wrestling Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Greg Pickle, our wrestling reporter, here with us to give you all the information, all the details, all the info. Greg, welcome to the show. Appreciate your time as always. Busy couple of days here for you with back-to-back big moments for Penn State wrestlers and future Penn State wrestlers this weekend.
T-Frank, happy Big Ten Championships weekend to you, and also PIAA State Championships to you, and the same to our listeners as well. Yeah, this is an action-packed weekend. I think the reason it feels so condensed to me, T-Frank, this isn't necessarily a new scheduling quirk. For at least a couple years now, if not more. I'm sure somebody out there probably has the exact number, but Big Tens and PIAAs have coincided. The difference is usually they're not 90 minutes from each other. So Penn State was supposed to host the Big Ten championships with fans during the COVID season. Obviously, we all recall how that played out. So they got a redo essentially from the Big Ten Conference to host the event this year and crown conference champions and figure out the allocations of who is going to the national tournament, which is, of course, a couple weeks from now in Cleveland. So, yeah, I think that's why it all feels so compact to me. This is not like it's new in terms of both of these happening at once. They're just usually not happening so close together. But it's great, and it's awesome for Pennsylvania wrestling fans and Penn State fans, of course, as well.
So we're going to start in reverse order, timeline-wise, but we're going to start with the Big Ten tournament coming up this weekend. Of course, the official brackets come out on Friday, so we're not going to have any of that information. We've talked about the preceding a little bit this week with Cale Sanderson. You can check out his response to that. Pretty frank to start. He
had no thoughts on the matter, T. Frank. He had no thoughts on the matter.
Yeah. So let's just start there. What did you think of the pre-seed as we see it now? And obviously, if you're watching this after it's all been amended or things that have happened, but it is the conversation of this is really where we're starting with a couple of these guys. So what did you think of the situation and then his response?
Yeah, I want to note that first because you could be watching this really at any point before the tournament starts. And the fact that some of the things we're going to talk about, we're going to try and be as informative as we can while also noting that the seeds could change. So Penn State has 6 number one pre-seeds. They could have as many as 7 if Levi Haynes moves up to number 1 over Nebraska's Christopher Minto, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes. But yeah, trying something new is great. And Tom Brands told reporters, the Iowa coach, of course, in Iowa City yesterday, that when they voted for this, it was 12-4. One school, Northwestern, was against, and one school abstained. What the abstention reasoning was, I'm not sure. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Long story short, a lot of griping about this, reasonably so, from coaches. But at the same time, they all put their stamp of approval on this and also had the chance. I think there's a lot of conversation out there this week about having a human element and applying common sense and can computers do that, blah, blah, blah. I think the guys, Justin Bash and Willie Saylor said it best on their show that, that WrestleStat, the company that seeded this thing or provided the information for the pre-seed, just gave them the info based on the info that it was given by the Big Ten and its coaches who voted on this. So they had a chance, I guess is what I'm saying, to put something in place to possibly prevent this. You could argue that they do have it in place. Friday's seating meeting with the coaches will be the place where things could change, things could be challenged. The whole process is just a little confusing to me. Why did they decide to do it? What the conversations were had about pitfalls to doing it. The Big Ten's not the first conference to do this, T. Frank. Others have tried it. Some have liked it. Some have not. But I guess long story short, it would just be nice to know a little bit more in the public domain about what exactly went into this decision to go this route and why there wasn't conversation or action about putting something in place to not, basically have the Big Ten eating a bunch of not very nice words all week, even though when things are all finally said and done on Saturday morning at the Bryce Jordan Center, not everything's going to be perfect, but I bet it's closer than what people think it is now. So we'll see. But again, the seeds can change after Friday's coaches meeting. I don't know what time that meeting is. I would have to think it's around lunchtime. I would be willing to bet sometime early afternoon Friday we should have everything finalized. But, the Big Ten, I don't want to get too far off the reservation here, so to speak. But, the Big Ten typically is released pre-seeds on Wednesday. They put these out on Monday as a part of their Big Ten Network live show at noon. Shane Sparks explained the criteria that went into it and so on and so forth. But yeah, the whole process just feels a little, I don't know if helter-skelter is the right word, or incomplete, I think is probably the one description that I keep coming back to. It just seems like not everything was thought through with this from really the time the conversation began about doing it this way until today. And, we'll see at the end of the tournament how it all shakes out in the end.
And to leave a full week in between the pre-seed announcement, which had a lot of anomalies in it, and then when you're actually going to fix it and the coaches are going to get in the room and talk about it, that leaves a lot of time for us to, them to talk about it, them to be unhappy about it, everyone to discuss it, and then it actually is fixed. So, the rollout also here does not seem like it was designed to minimize controversy, if that makes some sense.
Did you get the sense, and we'll move on from this after this, but when you were listening to Cale Sanderson on Monday, he had mentioned at the start of his answer about this whole thing that they had spent a lot of time previously, the coaches were on a committee basically to rank these weights. Yeah. And did you get the sense, the understanding I took away from his words, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that's all we can do at this point in time as we sit here and record this midweek, is that they were looking for a way to get some of that time back. And that was the reason to go to this seeding program that they used. And so I think, just ultimately at the end of the day, just one person speaking up and saying, hey, so we still have to keep some committee element to this to make sure the computer spits it out right, probably would have solved a lot of issues. Easy for me to say in hindsight, but... Yeah,
and they're going to have to do it anyway, right? So they're going to have to go Friday in a committee, get together, and sort all the things out where now there's this pre-seed and that you can challenge with if it's within 15 points, but then they at the time he didn't know what the points were for any of these rankings. So what can you challenge, what can you not challenge? So there was a lot of stuff left up in the air. Basically, he said we tried something new, but we're definitely gonna have to do something different. This didn't work, and to have the most prominent coach in the sport be like, yeah, that sucked. Not ideal, not ideal. But as you pointed out, trying new things that it's not a bad thing to try new things. So let's talk about the tournament, and obviously because of a lot of this stuff, we're not going to get into the weight by weight breakdown of each wrestler because of how the bouts can change going forward. But we do have a sense of who's in each weight class, and so let's get into that. Anything else you wanted to get to? Let's push on to what you see coming up this weekend from Penn State in the NCAA tournament. Who you think are most likely to get a win, and who you think has the toughest road to do any of those things? So just break it down for us. Give us your preview.
Yeah, when you look at the Big Ten tournament pre-seeds here, just going down the list, the six I've mentioned that were number one are Luke Littledahl at 125, Marcus Blaze at 133. That's one that could change. Undefeated defending national champ Lucas Bird of Illinois is at number 2. Those two have not met this year. Blaze arguably, I don't really think it's an argument, but I guess some might argue from the Illinois side, Blaze has the best win, I think, in the weight class this year. Whether that means he should be number 1, we'll have to wait and see what the coaches decide, if it's even possible for Illinois to challenge that based on whether or not Bird is within that 15-point threshold you mentioned. Braden Davis, currently number 7 at 141. Shane Van Ness is number 1 at 149. I don't think that's going to change, obviously. PJ Duke, number 2 at 157, behind Antrell Taylor, who beat him at the Bryce Jordan Center later this year. No one's unseating Mitchell Messenbrink at number 1 at 165. We'll wait and see if Levi Haynes, who beat Christopher Minto in the dual meet season, ends up jumping over him for the number 1 spot. Currently, the Cornhusker is number 1 and Levi Haynes number 2. Haynes, as we've covered on the show in the past, did not get to wrestle as many starters as some others this year through no fault of his own. He took the mat, but I think that hurt him in this seeding criteria. Rocco Welsh, it's number 1 at 184. Don't think that is going to change, but you never know. Josh Barr definitely is 197's number 1. That won't be changing. And Cole Mirasola, number 4 at 285. Don't think his seed's going to change. Who he wrestles and how the bracket shakes out could change here moving forward. So again, those seeds won't be finalized one way or the other until Friday. But to your point, now that I did exactly what you told me not to do, is the first of all, the outcome of this for Penn State wrestling. So as we've talked about here on the show previously, and as you Penn State fans well know, the goal is always to win any situation you're in, be it a dual meet, be it the Army Black Knight Invitational, be it the Big Tens. But the whole goal is to do whatever it takes on the path through those matches, win or lose, to be ready for the national tournament. So let's start the conversation there. Penn State, the Big Ten, of course, has the most allocations from the NCAA of any conference. What does that mean? Each weight class will have a certain number of auto qualifiers for the national tournament from the Big Ten. Will Penn State leave the Bryce Jordan Center Sunday with all 10 wrestlers automatically qualified for nationals is the question we'll start with. I think the answer is yes. And this is not going to surprise you what comes out of my mouth next, but Braden Davis will have the toughest possible path to do so. Not because he can't do it, but because there's only 7 Big Ten allocations or auto bids at 141 pounds. He enters this tournament as we speak today as the number 7 seed. So that tells you kind of all you need to know. He'd have to wrestle to his seed at the moment to earn an auto bid. Now, if he wrestles above it, obviously great. He will have no problem getting to Cleveland without the need for the at-large process. Anyone who would not earn an auto bid for any reason would then be thrown into the at-large pool, which will be announced, I believe it's Monday of next week before the brackets come out on Wednesday. So we'll see how that all shakes out. But yeah, I would be very surprised if, barring some kind of major surprise, injury, miss weight, failed skin check, so, something that you can't possibly predict for going into a tournament. I would be very surprised if Penn State doesn't leave with all 10, but as always, Penn State fans will be watching Braden Davis closely to see if he wrestles above his seed, below his seed, and what all that means for his future here in the postseason.
So you got winners of the tournament you have outlined. I think, as you mentioned, 6 are the top seeds. A lot of those guys you expect to go on and win. Who do you think are the locks, and who are the guys that can contend for, winning their weight class at the Bryce Jordan Center this weekend?
Yeah, I don't have as many locks as I probably should at this point in time. Mitchell Messenbrink, obvious lock. Josh Barr, obvious lock. You start with those two. Not a whole lot more needs to be said. I do think Levi Haynes wins the title at 174 pounds, but Chris Minto is a formidable opponent. And obviously, you never know what can happen during the course of a 7-minute match, especially if it ends up in going to tiebreaker or sudden victory and then tiebreaker. So I think he wins, but interesting one to keep an eye on there. Obviously I would expect him to win going away, but I think if there's a tier of lock, you have Barr and you have Messenbrink on the top tier, and then you have Levi Haynes, of course, in that next tier. And then obviously you look at some of these other guys who are number 1 seeds. Luke Littledahl is going to have to beat Nick Bouzakis again, beat him during the dual meet season. I wouldn't think that would be an issue, but again, you never know. These usually are close matches. They're close during the dual meet in a lot of cases, and they're always closer and usually lower scoring for most guys, Messenbrink notwithstanding, and Barr usually notwithstanding in the postseason. So, you're talking about a match that could be close there at 125, assuming those two make the finals. Marcus Blaze is someone who comes into this tournament, again, is currently a number 1 pre-seed, has beat everyone in front of him, and again, arguably has the best win of any 133 on the season. So will he finally get to face Lucas Bird and settle that on the mat? I sure hope so. I'm sure a lot of you who have tickets and or a plan to be in front of a TV or beside your radio on Sunday hope so. So he's one to watch, obviously in title contention as well. And then you have Rocco Welsh, the 184-pound Nittany Lion, who is the number 1 seed at 184. It's an interesting weight class. He hasn't seen Max McElney yet from Minnesota, so he's obviously somebody that, those two I think most would expect to be in the final, but Silas Allred is in this field as the current number 3 seed as well. So, I think those are your, I think when you look at the seeding and everything else, you start with those guys. PJ Duke, can he beat Antrell Taylor or somebody else and win a Big Ten title as a freshman? Yeah, of course, at 157 pounds. Do you expect Cole Mirasola or Braden Davis to come into this tournament and win a title? No. I am not really sure how you could based on the regular season results, although Mirasola wrestled a heck of a lot better. And if he beat somebody who beat him during the regular season at Big Tens, I don't think anyone, including you and I, would be surprised by that. So It's kind of the rundown right now. Again, I can't recall a Big Ten tournament that was more like, I think T. Frank last year, I had to change just a couple things after the seeding meeting. And we're talking, you're talking about like, okay, they could face this guy in the second round, and instead of maybe the 11 seed. It was the guy who was previously the 12 seed. We're talking little things like that. And in this case, we're talking about seeding changes that could potentially really change the way these brackets look on the top half and the bottom half. So we'll have all that covered at bluewhiteillustrated.com. Would expect it to be a good week for Penn State. Most importantly, in the mind of Cale Sanderson and his coaches and wrestlers. Would be very surprised if they don't get all 10 through automatically to nationals. How many champs they end up with, it looks like half the field, I think, is probably a fair estimate. And if it goes above that, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Okay. So just quickly, how can people follow along, and what are the tentpole times for people to check in with you? Obviously, the play-by-play and watching it along with you, but when do you put recaps out? When do we hear from Cale Sanderson this weekend? How does all that shake out for people who want to follow along with you at bluewhiteillustrated.com?
Yeah, so two important, I'm glad you brought that up, two important notes. So the action gets going Saturday morning at, I believe it's 10:30 a.m. So I think that, well, obviously I know we'll have live updates throughout the day on Saturday and Sunday. If there's a match going on, you can find the live updates post at, it's 10 a.m. The first round starts on Saturday. But if there's a match going on, whether it's on BTN or not, and this gets important on especially Sunday, when they're going to be streaming both the consolation semifinals, the seventh place matches, which could be very relevant to Penn State again as it relates to Braden Davis. Obviously, he's hoping that's not the case, but those are at noon on Sunday, the third and fifth place matches, and then the championship bouts are at 4:30. One other session is on Big Ten Plus exclusively. That's the consolation matches and wrestlebacks at 5 p.m. on Saturday. So long story short, I think we'll have live updates on the homepage from roughly 10 a.m. Saturday until 7 p.m. Sunday with full recaps and any news and notes that come out in between up over at bluewhiteillustrated.com. So yeah, if there's a match happening, we will have you covered if a Penn State guy is in it or if there's something going on that relates to a Penn State guy, potentially impacts him at this tournament.
Greg grinding through another weekend of full-on coverage of Penn State wrestling with the marathon of the tournament being 2 full days. So make sure you check him out. Give him a follow on social media. Like the video, by the way, to reward him for all of his hard work being here and then working all weekend long. Appreciate you doing all of that. Let's get into the PIAAs. What do we need to know about wrestlers that have Penn State connections coming up this week? Is it Thursday, Friday?
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, yeah. So the PIAA finals, I'm gonna try and do this. I don't know if it's the greatest idea I've ever had, but I am intending to leave the house here at the end of the first session on Saturday, which should be around like 2:30-ish once I get everything wrapped up. Drive to Hershey, cover the finals, assuming one of the 4 Penn State guys is wrestling in the PIAA finals, which I'd be shocked if at least one of them wasn't. We'll talk about that more in a sec. Then come back for the semifinals on Saturday night, and then obviously we'll have a full day of college coverage on Sunday. But we're going to try and mix the high school coverage in on Saturday if everything goes as planned. If not, we'll cover it either way, but we'd like to be down there for that. 4 Penn State commits wrestling at this weekend's PIAA championships. They start bright and early at 8 a.m. Thursday morning, or 9 a.m. Thursday morning with Class AA action. There's a girls session in between, and then the Class 3A guys take the mat on Thursday afternoon. So who are the Penn State guys competing? Landon Sighting, Class of 2027 commit, is the lightest future Penn State wrestler in action. He is in the 121-pound bracket from Norwin High School out in Pittsburgh area. Braden Weaver, Class 3A, 133-pound wrestler from Altoona. We all know where that is, I assume. James Whitbread, the Class 3A, 152-pound Class of 2027 recruit from State College area, will be at this year's PIAA State Championships after finishing, I believe it was third last year in Hershey. And last but not least, Class of 2026 commitment Elijah Brown wrestles in the 215-pound weight class for Bell Vernon, defending NCAA champ, a one-time Pitt commit who backed away from that pledge in October and then committed to Penn State on the signing day for sports like wrestling in earlier November. So those are the 4 guys with direct Penn State commitment connections that'll be on the mat. We'll be trying to keep track of non-verbal commitments and or signees who are in action as well. But those are the 4 that'll be looking to add state medals to their already impressive resumes this weekend.
All right. So among that group, who are you looking at in terms of opportunity to win, and which ones should Penn State fans key in on to see something to expect something from the future? The guys you expect something from in the future.
Yeah, so James Whitbread is really interesting. A guy who, when he committed to Penn State, and even really to this day, is not rated as highly as some of his other peers in Penn State wrestling recruiting classes, but has had a really nice, steady growth during his high school career. He comes into this state tournament at 45-5 on the season. He was sixth at states last year. I'm sorry, I misspoke there. Sixth at states last year, which was his first at 152. But can he improve on that? I'll be interested to see. And I don't want to say put his name on the map because it seems a little unfair, but at the same time, he's, again, just not ranked quite where some of his peers are. So does that change this weekend? We'll have to wait and see. Class of 2027 recruit again. Landon Seiden, obviously 47-1, top-ranked Mad Scouts wrestler in the country at 120 pounds, competing at 121 in this tournament. He has a likely rematch with Du Bois sophomore Mateo Galagos. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm sure I did. I apologize to him. But Seiden suffered his first loss of the year at the Western Regionals PIAA tournament last weekend. Those two are likely to meet in the finals again this weekend. And certainly two of the better guys in the country, not just in Pennsylvania, in the country at 121. So we'll see how that all shakes out. Seiden, of course, returning to the postseason after missing all of last year due to injury. You talk about Braden Weaver, four-time district champ, T-Frank. This is the fourth different weight class he will be competing in states. Finished third a year ago. He's the one I was thinking of that finished third. So curious to see if he can improve on that before heading off to Penn State. And then we'll wrap with Elijah Brown. Like I said, defending NCAA champ, favorite in this bracket as well. He's 42-1. The guy who beat him earlier this year during the dual meet season, he beat last weekend at Western Regionals. When you look at his season to date, like I said, 42-1, 26 of those matches have come by fall. Wins have come by fall. Like I said, former Pitt commit that ended up at Penn State. I believe he's 24th on Matt Scout's senior big board there in terms of the class of 2026. So medals coming almost certainly for this group. How many and where, what part of the podium? We'll have to wait and see. We'll have that covered all weekend long at bluewhiteillustrated.com. Going to try and get down there on Friday for quarterfinals and check those guys out before the finals on Saturday. Maybe semifinals too. I don't know. Trying to map out how much in-person versus afar watching I can do of these two tournaments and maximize the coverage for all of you. So still mapping that out, but that is the game plan at the moment.
You're a machine, Greg. And just as a note, Greg will be bringing us Cale Sanderson's press conference afterwards as well, which you can check out here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. So once again, like the video and hit the notifications so you know when we get that, so you can hear directly from Cale Sanderson after the tournament and discuss how all those things went next week with us here on the Penn State Wrestling Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr for Greg Pickle. We'll talk to you then.